For the hour. This evening I have with me political activist Mr. Anthony James. Now on April 28th, Mr. James did a live online radio program where he basically expressed that he had lost confidence in the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, the Honorable Farley Chavez Augustine. This stemmed from a site visit that the Chief Secretary led with members of his executive team at the proposed site for the Marriott development. That's what we Tobagonians fondly call Back Bay, technically known as Rocky Bay. And so this evening I have with me Mr. Anthony James for us to go through a bit of what he said. He had a very explosive live, and we will share some of the tidbits with you, but we have the man himself in studio for us to really try to sift through what may have caused this sort of change of heart, because Mr. James, he joined us on For the Hour, our very first episode with Mandate Monday, and if you will recall, Mr. James said that while he did not see what was presented as a report per se, he had some concerns and so on. In the end, he still voted the executive, giving them a 7 out of 10. So we're going to talk with Mr. James tonight to find out what changed and whether it was really just the Back Bay proposed development. Good evening, Mr. James.
Well, very pleasant evening to you, Ms. Lashley, and very pleasant evening to the audience. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here as usual to really speak or continue that thrust forward, because my main agenda is the liberation of Tobago. That's right. And so that when I speak is in that context. And I don't know, it's a fair deduction to say that I have lost confidence in the Chief Secretary. When I spoke on Mandate Monday, I spoke to a certain context,
okay.
Given the background, given all the constraints and the way they would have performed thus far. I graded them a 7 out of 10. But with respect to what I saw transpired at Back Bay, to adopt that project, which would have agreed to by the PNM who were in office before them. If you remember, before the elections, or before this regime came into power, as far as I remember, they were not in support of that project.
Right, but let me ask you this, Mr. James. One of the things I know from me looking on, and I can only talk about your public expression so far, you, during the campaign, basically advocated for the PDP. Right?
No.
You didn't. You wouldn't say that you did that.
No.
All right. Okay. So then, that's my bad, and I'm going to. We got it correct on For the Hour.
Some people may make their own deductions from the from my comments, and knowing that my brother is part of the PDP.
Yeah. So that's another thing.
And I see that my family supported the PDP, when I looked at, I know that there was going to be a change, because you're talking 2020 is very historical and biblical, and Tobago changes after 20 years.
Right.
And so that after 20 years you had 6-6. And so that the momentum had already swung in favor of the PDP. So if they were going to be a winner, it would have been the PDP. The PDP.
Gotcha.
That was obvious. And there needed to be a change. One must understand, and to be brutally honest, the PNM cannot take Tobago anywhere. They are not from here. And that is why in the still of the night, they agreed to that project within the hung-over period or roll-over period within that 6-6. Because the antecedent circumstance of that would have been the Sandals project. And Tobagonians would have argued strenuously and pushed back against Sandals.
So let us we have, before we delve deeper into that conversation, let's share with our viewers the specific project that Mr. James is talking about. If you have not seen it just yet, we will share a short clip with you featuring the Chief Secretary, Farley Chavez Augustine, so that you can get some further context as to the proposed development.
Yo, let me take you to a place where the sun shines bright and the people move slow, taking their time, doing their thing from day to day. To the Tobago, yo, yo.
This morning we are going to do a site visit of the estate that we know as Back Bay, and we're looking at it because this is the venue that is designated for the new Marriott Hotel. This morning we went through Rocky Point with the hotel developers along with stakeholders within the Tobago space, people representing this community, the community of Mount Irving, folks from the Historical Society, the surfers, and just people with general interests. We had the Division of Infrastructure, Tourism present, and we had a few of our own engineers present. And this morning we were able to identify where some of the key historical sites are, where artifacts can be retrieved and should be retrieved. We made certain to speak to the developers about the coastal area and being able to protect the coast at all costs, and we were given the assurance that they weren't going to do anything to the beach or to disturb the coast. But we did point out where there is a need for some coastal protection implements along the estate to allow for the safeguarding of the property and the land.
The development is subject to change depending on tweaking, but it's the essential components is a 200 room hotel, Marriott International hotel, and with some bungalows, about 13 to 15 bungalows as an extension of the hotel, together with a villa development and a townhouse development that will all be part of the resort. The project, as far as I'm concerned, is totally aligned with the aspirations of Tobago. We want to encourage tourism. The project does that. We want to encourage tourism with as much local input as possible. Clearly, our intention is that, because if you only look at it from a business perspective, why would I want to import something if I can get it locally?
The major and most important archaeological find on the headland is an old Corlander fort. Now this was built in 1680 and it's potentially the oldest structure in the whole of Trinidad and Tobago. It's still in reasonable order and it's all there. The walls are there, slightly damaged. There's a floor beneath beautifully dressed stone blocks.
I was actually blown away by the beauty that we found, because certainly we know about the Fort James, the Fort King George, we know about the Fort Milford, but there are so many other forts that exist in Tobago, and it's just simply being able to figure out where they are and to be able to now determine how we can preserve them for our generations to now continue to enjoy them.
Tobago is in need of some sort of foreign development. The area is unused and there are many opportunities that would be presented. Along with tourism, there would be local content. The investors have promised to train locals to create a stock.
The executive wanted to ensure that we protect the interests of Tobagonians and that all the concerns of the stakeholders are heard this early on, even before the final designs are done. They came with just a mock-up of what they envision, but there will have to be some replacement of some of the buildings and shifting things around to suit the lay of the land.
All right, so that video clip was courtesy the Office of the Chief Secretary, Tobago House of Assembly, and you saw the project, the proposed project, Marriott development at Rocky Bay, or they're calling it Rocky Point. We Tobagonians know that as Back Bay. And Mr. James, this triggered Mr. James. That's how I'm going to put it, right? This particular announcement or this video triggered what you called an angry reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some things in the video that, yes, clearly the language is a bit conflicting. But let's hear your real issue with that proposal.
I'm angry. A part of me is still angry, and I am calling on the Chief Secretary and his Executive Council to pull back that project. It is worthless, counterproductive. It's a colonial project to further sink Tobago further into colonization, right? What the project is doing is to set up a hierarchy of other people being in Tobago and greater than us.
Now, one thing,
right?
Mr. James, the end of the video, the Chief Secretary did specify that there were no approvals and he was expecting them to come back with designs, final designs and so on.
Well, I'm against the whole project. I'm against the whole project.
So you don't want the Executive Council to entertain the proposals at all?
Of course not, and they should not. And I'm hoping all of Tobago will rise up and stop. Just as how we stop sandals from happening, we must also stop this from happening.
So let me ask you a question then. I am not pro a sandals type model, but what I do understand for Tobago at this point, we need ways for economic development, whether it's diversifying and stretching out agriculture and so on. Tourism is one of the main sector on the island. You are not for sandals. You were not for sandals.
Yeah.
You're now not for the Marriott proposal. What would you suggest? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if we are to do hotel development, we should go back to the Sandals model. And mind you, I'm not pro that particular model, and I think my preferred hotel to stay in is the Marriott. But just that the Marriott, to me, as a layperson, does not fit with the vibe of Tobago. In terms of where they're going and what they're proposing, Sandals seems as if that would be a better fit for the Tobago tourism product. I don't know if you agree, if you disagree, but what will you propose? You're against Sandals, you're against Marriott. What would you propose as a potential development?
Let me see that Sandals did not represent economic development for you and me, the native Tobagonian.
Right, okay.
The Marriott Hotel does not represent economic enhancement, empowerment of the Tobagonian like us. It doesn't at all. And if we will go forward, let's suppose Sandals is complete. It's gone now, but let's just go forward hypothetically, right? That Sandals was finished, or Marriott is what they are proposing, it is complete. Let us now treat with the actuality of things in Tobago. How does Tobago now benefit? In the first place, they are not partnering with us. All the profits are theirs. There will be no taxation. How do we profit? How does Tobago profit? Even the economy that is called now Trinidad and Tobago, how does it profit? Because one of the things we're not doing here is to go into data, and so we don't analyze things in detail. When you watch American basketball, they'll tell you how many passes this person would have passed, how many rebounds. They go into every aspect of the game. But so let us hold on. Let us go in now to every aspect, every possible aspect of this. Who will benefit? There will be a few yard boys. There will be a few people cleaning the grounds, as you call them, yard boys, whatever we choose to call them. There will be some people working at the bar, some working at the restaurant, and so on. What will be the size of their salaries, and how now they now will be taxed? But they're not being taxed by the government of Tobago. They'll be taxed by the government in the general way the government, according to the tax regime, the government of what they call Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm asking, from that one plant itself, how much revenue really is going to come in to what we desire to be a Tobago economy? Because the truth of the matter, the Tobago economy right now as it stands, as far as we know actively, not the real Tobago economy, because the real Tobago economy is worth right now about $6, $7, $8 billion in 1 year. That's the fact of the matter. But they have debarred us constitutionally. They have outlawed us from our own economy. And the same people who are proposing this, they are part of that decision, you know.
So okay,
right?
You have you're making the point that the overall profits of this kind of development
not coming to
does not stay in Tobago.
It doesn't. Not
If
coming to us at
anything,
all.
it may possibly hurt the island. You talk about calling for statistics. I want to just jump back a bit before we move forward. I don't know if you recall when Sanders was being proposed and there was all sorts of discussions. One of the things that came up is when they said, okay, we're going to need about 20,000 eggs, something like that. And there was a discussion about getting the Tobagonian farmer, egg producers especially.
We heard all of that. And you
no,
hear,
but I'm getting to the numbers.
You hear more of that again.
So that's the thing. We haven't heard anything with this yet, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at the numbers because one of the things that you're saying is that there's no science, there's no numbers, but we did get some insight into a small tidbit of what is possible, which is income.
Yeah, but not on an empirical basis, right? What you're having is people mouthing ideas and suppositions and so on. But before I go to that point, Tobago is restricted by law to 4.03%. Forget 6.9, because we have never had more than 4.04. But Tobago is restricted because that's the cult. We are dealing with a culture here that we have to be real to. We're dealing with an attitude towards Tobago. We are not regarded as correctly in terms of humanity in Tobago and Trinidad, what they call Trinidad and Tobago.
James.
So I'm saying, when we work here, I want us to understand, it's very important to understand, because right before our eyes, whether we sow or not, because that's how we're supposed to run our budget from. Our own sowing, that's scriptural. As a man sow, so shall he
But what are we
reap.
sowing?
And so that's my point. So I'm saying to you, the law is, it disregards the laws of God about sowing and reaping. What the Constitution has done to Tobago is to tell Tobagonians that in all the monies available to the government in the Consolidated Fund of Trinidad and Tobago, you are entitled to 4.03%. Call it 6.9, digest letter, but it has never been applied. So we are stuck there.
Right.
So this idea that we are doing economic development to benefit Tobago is really a pie in the sky. I want us to understand that, because regardless of what we do here, and that law itself, I criticized it back in 1998. I'm not saying this now. When Vanos came up with it, and Hocho Charles in the Dispute Resolution Commission, Anthony James criticized it. Because in my view, that's not the way to solve a dispute between Tobago and Trinidad.
But
right?
What you're talking about there requires advocacy, activism towards constitutional change.
Yes.
We're not
Yes.
seeing that happening. We're seeing a
that's my
move by the deputy political leader of the PDP. At least this is what he's expressing verbally in terms of the campaign and the shift to Trinidad and so on. But if we pull back now to the Executive Council of the THA, who today certainly, at least by today, you would have heard the news stories about the $1 billion debt and the Chief Secretary's commentary and so on. And what was interesting is, okay, we're owing $1 billion. You are against the hotel type developments in the way that they're coming forward. Today, the Chief Secretary said that he will basically get the THA lawyers to stop what's happening with the proposed marina. That thing started back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, when Minister Stuart Young, notified the nation that cabinet agreed and they were going forward and yada, yada, yada. My question is, yes, we have some issues in Tobago. We have historical context issues. The legislation does in fact need to change. I agree with you on that. But what do we do now while we work on all of that? Because you say no Sandals, no Marriott. The Chief Secretary today say no Marina until I suppose they consult with the THE.
No Marina. No Sandals. People need to get that we need to get that in our heads, and we can discuss it, right? So that, as one man even said, it was a game changer. You have so many similar projects here in Tobago, with so many people coming in, and there is no report on those things. They have not empowered agriculture in Tobago. They have not empowered farmers, whether it's egg farmer, whatever farm it is. It has not done that.
Do you think that's their responsibility?
Whose
or
responsibility?
You're saying they have not. Is it not our responsibility?
No, when I say perhaps I use the wrong subject or word there. What I mean is that those projects, those projects have not done so. And we are not to necessarily expect miraculously. Because what they're really aiming at is this whole concept about branding, you know. Sandals wasn't doing anything here, you know. And neither is Marriott doing anything in Tobago. Let's just understand that, you know. People are hearing slogans. They're using these things as slogans. And they're coming to you and tell you, hey, this is for you. They are selling it as that. This is for you. But really, they really came here to prosper these little native Tobagonians, really. They came here to prosper themselves. And I'm saying, what are we giving up? That's the point I'm making, you know. What are we giving up for what we are gaining? Is really basically jobs. So individual Tobagonians will get some jobs as a result. But how much jobs?
So you made another point about...
And even when they get the jobs, and from those jobs now, they will now pay in to the assembly fund or the consolidated fund. It's not even coming here. Tobago is in a political mess and needs to be organized. You can't have Trinidad collecting all the tax and posing as Trinidad and Tobago. The main thrust in Tobago now, and this is the burden of responsibility for the executive, is to push for constitutional change. Take one at a time, if you want to call it amendment, and keep pulling back. Keep pegging away the things that are obstructing us. What is happening is that Trinidad continues, or continue, if I use it in the plural sense, to make inroads into Tobago. You know what I'm saying? Tobago is not making inroads into Trinidad, and by that I mean the control that Trinidad has over Tobago, and they ought not to have. We are not making inroads into that.
Economic and
business. Economic, political, and so on. But it has to be political in order to bring the economics here, right? So they are making inroads. They are still poaching and so on, prospecting in Tobago. Nobody in Tobago is prospecting in Trinidad. Now, my electrical inspector. So when I speak, I'm speaking from a background, you know.
But I want to ask you.
Yes,
to ask you. Let's go back to the money and how it relates to the THE, because unlike this particular proposal, we may not consider it foreign direct investment because the developers, a Trinidad-based company, Superior Hotels, I think, right? They are investing in bringing the brand to Tobago. You're correct about that. How does the money then, because you were talking about jobs, but the money is in Trinidad and Tobago. So how are the ways that Tobago will benefit from that? Certainly, are you seeing nothing at all
that's the point
other than the jobs?
So how much, if we have to venture a course for no man's land, which is where they wanted to go first. It is because they didn't succeed there, they now want to go to Back Bay. What is Trinidad? What that privileged class of Trinidadians are doing?
You're saying this particular group wanted to go to no man's land as well?
Well, it's not necessarily the particular group, you know. What you're seeing here is a class of people. We are now seeing this coming to the fore. Dr. Rowley was at the fore in the beginning. What he has done quite smartly is to withdraw himself. But who got the Executive Council in Tobago to agree to that? it was not an Tobago Executive Council initiative.
Okay.
The initiative keeps coming from Trinidad. We know here that Dr. Rowley represents a certain clan of people that he's working for. He's not the most powerful person in Trinidad and Tobago. He absolutely not. For anybody who can think, he is not. He is the prime servant or the prime minister of that particular interest that controls the money and they control the money and they promote him to the front. In fact, that was one of the reasons why he and Mr. Manning fall out. That class of people was supporting Dr. Keith Rowley. They were not supporting Mr. Manning, right? So they're coming. So sometimes my language, I have to really tail back my language, because Bob Marley's songs are very instructive as to what is going on here. So they didn't succeed with the Sandals. The strategy has changed. They come now to Back Bay. They were Back Bay. They're looking for the prime property. No, I'm an electrical inspector. Was telling. Just let me make this point here. You see the back of the airport. In fact, I go across Tobago every day. Every week, I'm going all across Tobago. I know the lands that have been gobbled up. I know the massive projects that have come from the sister isle. The back of the airport, I'm telling you, is gone.
All right.
So, you know what I'm saying? When you leave the airport, my dear, and I'm saying we are not benefiting from those things. They have placed us in a vulnerable situation, and we are selling our lands. And some people are making that point. No, they're saying, all right, they have locked us away from our oil and gas resources. We know.
All right, so you're jumping into another thing there. I want us to stop and take a short break. When we come back, we will circle back to the discussion about the Executive Council and what you're calling... what you're requesting of the Chief Secretary. Stay with us, you're viewing For the Hour.
Our national borders, our first step to security, but a possible access point for guns, drugs, crime. If it does not look right, do the right thing. Call Crime Stoppers anonymously. 800-8477. Report possible border crime.
It makes it easier to bear. You won't regret it, no. Sweet, squeezer, don't tease her, never leave her. Got to talk, man, 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 squeezer, don't tease her. There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe, cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy our treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
Tobago Glass Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported. Are you looking for that all-in-one shopping experience? Then look no more. Visit Lamb's Best Mart for your grocery items, fruits and vegetables, drinks, home items, stationery, gift items, hampers, shopping gift cards, toiletries, small hardware items, and much more. We provide order and pickup service, even delivery to your door. We are your friendly community supermarket. Check us out today at Lamb's Best Mart, located at 22 Daniel Trace Canby, or visit us on social media at Lamb's Best Mart.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're viewing For the Hour. My name is Glendora Lashley. If you're now joining us, we have Mr. Anthony James on with us, political activist, and we're talking about Mr. James's view that the current executive, chief secretary in particular, isn't the right choice right now to take us forward. Mr. James was triggered when he saw the site visit by the Chief Secretary, led by the Chief Secretary and some members of his executive, to the Back Bay proposed Marriott development, Marriott Hotel development, which is being proposed to be done through Superior Hotels, a local development group in Trinidad, right? And so we're talking about foreign direct investment versus local investment. In this case, Superior Hotels is based in Trinidad and Tobago, so it can be considered local investment because there's no foreign anything. What's essentially happening is that we're buying a foreign brand,
Definitely.
right? However, Mr. James, you had on the 28th, prior to now, questioned the model or the returns from existing properties, right? Because you mentioned some properties here in Tobago and you said, listen, we've done this already. Let's see what the returns are. Yeah. And we will have a clip of you saying that to kind of, you know, bring context to it. But that's very important. When you say that the Marriott development is basically to colonize Tobagonians, I want you to break that down into simpler terms, especially for younger people who may not have that historical context, because as you're aware, many younger people may say, well, okay, Marriott is a big brand, we need that in Tobago. Tobago don't have no big brands, planes ain't coming here because we don't have any hotels, or they run away sandals already. The Chief Secretary look like he's trying to run the marina if they don't go through the THA. You're definitely not for that. There is need to have something right now. What is that something in your mind that can actually bring income? Because this is the challenge of the THA.
You see, Mr. Manning said in 2005, and I think it was right at the Market Square when he said that. And this is where they are pigeonholing Tobago and forcing Tobago in a corner. He said, tourism is to at that point in time, they were discovering acres of oil and gas in Tobago. So in his response to that, and whatever noise was taking place in Tobago, Mr. Manning said, tourism is to Tobago what energy is to Trinidad. It is a known fact, because you have Ibis, that is off Plymouth down there, that's an oil field. You have Poinsessia and Hibiscus. Those are oil fields feeding Trinidad and Tobago for years in Tobago's water. So he had known, right? So he's saying energy is to, tourism is to Tobago, where energy is to Trinidad. So they have decided in Trinidad, it's not we making that statement. And Mr. Manning was not speaking for Tobago because they are anti-Tobago. So clearly he was speaking from a colonial mind and a colonial perspective.
So are you saying tourism is not, it doesn't represent what he's saying?
I'm saying that tourism is not to Tobago what energy is to Trinidad.
Okay.
I am saying that energy is to Tobago what energy is to Trinidad. In the same breath, I can say that tourism is to Trinidad. And I'm sure that Trinidad makes more money in tourism than Tobago. Nobody is saying that. I'm saying, and where is the data? Who decides that Tobago's course must be tourism? And what kind of tourism? I'm saying to what we are calling tourism is not in fact tourism. Tourism, let me break it down. In a home, I am in charge of my home, of my house, and I'm inviting guests. When the guests come, I am the host and I am doing the profiting. The guests coming and spending. What is happening in Tobago is that Trinidad controls the kind of tourism they are talking about. Trinidad controls that tourism product in Tobago. That's the fact. Tropicus, Crown Point on the Bay, Crown Reef, Store Bay Holiday Resorts, the one in Speyside up there, all over. That's what they're doing.
So you
they control that product. We are not we are not selling. What's going on in Castara is more like us.
Which is what I want to come to.
That's what I'm saying.
You have more years than me, so you know what happens.
I'm saying, first of all, we need
Tobagonians who have invested in that way, because yes, you're right. These properties,
it's not tourism.
The majority of them are not Tobagonian owned.
It's not tourism.
Right?
And they're not paying the taxes here either. Tobago is a slave colony.
Have you seen movement by Tobagonians to actually build properties of that kind of those kinds of attractions?
And I'm saying this is where the government of Tobago need to step in. They are the ones to step in here and identify an economic and political need in Tobago, forming partnerships and so on, because this is our economy. What is happening is Trinidad wants to decide the economics of Tobago. Superior Holdings, along with Dr. Pete Rowley and Ansel Dennis, the PNM in Trinidad, and the little council in Tobago, the little irrelevant council where Tobago is concerned, but relevant to them, important to them. They never discuss that project with Tobago. They can never do the breakdown and tell you how much is Superior Holdings, all those people who will be controlling the hotel. How much? When we get the little jobs and so on, how much are they making? And are we sharing in that profit? Is that tourism really? Is that really hosting? Tobago is not hosting anything there. What is happening, Ms. Lash? Let me just say this in closing. For now, is that Trinidad is expanding itself into a territory that they control, a colonial territory, and fooling our government, fooling our people, and telling us that this is for us, when in fact they are already building havens. Saman Grove is theirs. I just came from Tobago plantations today. Listen to me, that's a big expanse of land, acres of land for them. What is the data on it that Tobagonians are really profiting? I go to on a Friday night and dance at Magdalena down there. You know what the workers down? You know who's the manager?
I want to go back to.
We're just joking.
I want to go back to the 2009-2010 budget.
Yes.
Right? I looked for a post because this is something I highlighted on my social media. In the 2009-2010 budget, the government of Trinidad and Tobago indicated the need to spur foreign investment and economic activity in Tobago. Following extensive talks with the THE, 6 regions in Tobago were designated as tourism-related development areas. Right? 1, Arnosvale and Culloden Estate. 2, Bacolet Estate. 3, Buku and Golden Grove Estate. 4, Englishman's Bay. 5, Lowlands, including Tobago Plantations Development and Diamond Estate. And 6, Mount Irving and Grafton Estate. Right? This was 2009-2010 in following, they say, extensive talks with the THA. This came to my mind when you just said about what the THA needs to do and what it apparently looked like it wasn't doing. Here we have 6 areas of Tobago identified, put in a national budget.
By whom?
Well, 2009-2010, who was in government then? Right? But the THA was a part of it.
Yes.
What have
go ahead. You go ahead.
What have you seen since with these areas? What do you think about the identification of those areas? Because you said we need to be able to identify what we want out of our tourism. Here they say in Tobagonians.
And I'm saying this has nothing to do with Trinidad. The matter they are speaking of falls within the 5th schedule. And it has nothing to do with Trinidad. It has to do with Tobagonians taking action, necessary critical action to develop ourselves. What you are seeing here, the bigger, and not partner, the bigger associate in Trinidad, is ramming a narrative, a philosophy, if you can call it that, down the throats of Tobago or Tobagonians. And I'm saying, if you think I am wrong, look at the existing stock and tell us how far the existing stock has carried us. And when we build one, and when one more is built like that, how far that one is going to carry us. We're not doing that. We're just engaging in slogan talk, pie in the sky.
But what do you, now again, and I suppose I want to bring in the clip now,
right,
if we can, with you talking about the Chief Secretary and what you expect, because that's kind of what I wanted to ask you now. What do you expect of the executive, the Tobago executive? Because what you're talking about, there's a lot of legislative changes. There's a lot of things that the THA legally don't have any teeth to actually get done.
Yeah, is all of Tobago needs to fight this fight, because you can't tie my hands behind my back, take my wealth away from me and give me slavery and tell me that slavery is wealth. That's what they're doing.
All right, so I want the producer to play this clip, because I want to ask you a question based on what you just said and tying into this clip. So let's go to Mr. James, his initial expression about what he wants to see, what his thoughts on the current executive and the Chief Secretary.
But I always here.
It was with dismay, absolute dismay, that I looked at whatever they call it that took place in Rocky Bay.
Oh yes, yes.
It was really sad. I was extremely angry, and I have come to an angry position where the Chief Secretary is concerned. And it is very clear to me that Tobago is completely off track. Completely off track. And absolutely misguided and misled by an unprepared and unready Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine. I've spoken my mind, and I've spoken the truth, and my statement is a fair assessment of the quality or lack of quality of the current Chief Secretary. And I based on what I have seen there, I expect that type of behavior throughout this 4-year term.
Mr. James, you said that on the 28th of April. First question, and just yes or no. Has your mind changed?
There's a change from
what you expressed there in the video.
No, I would have expressed that on the 28th as that was triggered by what I saw, the charade taking place in Back Bay, right? But I was never highly impressed by the Chief Secretary. Let me say that as I'm on the spot here. I was never highly impressed. I listened his language, and I knew that he's not where we need to be as a people going forward. And when the language betrays what you have on the inside, Farley Augustine is a young person in his 30s. He has not lived long enough to know, to be able to understand history, historical context, where we are, where we need to go. He's not properly baptized in the politics and life of Tobago to be seasoned, to have strong convictions, to stand up to the forces of colonization that are coming to him from Trinidad.
So one of the things I'm curious about, because in that video you also spoke about seeing that unpreparedness, well before now.
Yeah, man.
But as you said, your family supported this organization knowing that Farley Chavez Augustine as a candidate was set to be the chief secretary if they won. Was there any sort of conversation, discussion, reaching out to say, listen, young man, chief secretary in waiting, you may need some added assistance? And this is all coming back to what you're saying THA need to do, because what you're saying THA need to do has to be done by the said chief secretary. But you've also said that the chief secretary basically will not be able to do that because he simply doesn't have the capacity.
He doesn't have the capacity. And Tobago must be honest with Tobagonians.
So what are we doing What are we doing going forward? Have you reached out to the chief secretary if you feel the need to? Your brother is somebody who is a sitting secretary. Have you all, I don't know if your brother has spoken to you on this, if he feels the same way that you feel. The chief secretary is the chief secretary, and more than likely he may be there for 4 years, as you say, right? Seeing what your position is, based on what you've seen and how you feel, what intervention has to happen to be able to get the chief secretary to where you feel that he needs to be?
Well, I don't know that he can do it. That's the point. And we say honestly. Everybody comes with limitation. Everybody has the extent of their own capacity. I have an extent to my capacity. He has, you have. So we have to be fair to that, right?
Can he have advisors?
Well, he has advisors. The advisors themselves are limited. And you see, if the people of Tobago listen and listen carefully. No, you had a situation where you had the PNM there. PNM is not from Tobago. Right? And
how can you dismiss the Tobago born and bred people, even though they belong to a Trinidad-led party? They're all Tobago.
But even in that sense, you're contradicting the whole context of the Tobago House of Assembly. How could the Tobago House of Assembly that came about as a result of a motion that was moved for Tobago to govern Tobago, and a party that is headquartered by the same colonizer is in charge of them here?
Okay, so
we need to be honest with that also.
All right, and that's a discussion for another one. So let's come back to the chief secretary. Again, you're seeing deficiencies, you've raised them. And I'm exploring this because you're clearly not the only person that have said this. You are probably the bravest one to just say it out loud. My question, however, is this. If so many people supported the PDP, knowing full well that Farley Chavez Augustine would be the chief secretary, was there any move prior to the election to say, we're here to support you policy-wise. We don't need to be a paid advisor, but there are several things that perhaps may need our knowledge and our experience, that kind of thing, particularly in a way that doesn't come across as if you're belittling the chief secretary. And I'm saying that because humans are humans, and how we talk to people in Tobago is important. So I know, because I know of another older senior person, very experienced as well, but the way that person speaks may just come off as, you know, antagonistic towards the chief secretary. And you wouldn't blame the chief secretary if he doesn't listen. But in this case, you are highlighting deficiencies that are serious deficiencies, if they are in fact the deficiencies. What's the plan to help the chief secretary move forward to where you think he needs to be? Because you're saying he don't have it, but he's the chief secretary.
Right. So Tobago first has to analyze where Tobago is and where Tobago needs to be. We have to understand the history of colonization, the history of Tobago where we are. We have to understand what is right for us and what is wrong for us. We need to understand those things, and we must have solid convictions where those things are concerned. I'm saying the chief secretary is in his 30s. And clearly, when you listen to him, he is not grounded. He's not grounded in philosophy. He's not grounded in ideology. He's not grounded in the politics. He's not grounded in history. These are brutal facts that we must face. Many people knew that. What has happened is that there was a desperate move to remove the PNM. One of the weaknesses of the politics in Tobago is that people are just going around and they are buying candidates. Those things are happening. I'm telling you. I'm wrong. People are buying candidates, they are picking up candidates. After you win your seat, you have a history to evolve. You have a history to go forward, and you have a context with Trinidad that you have to overcome.
But
can you stand up in the same room with Dr. Rowley and tell him no? Can you come across to all the cohorts that you're going to meet with and match them intellectually, match them philosophically, match them, not just match them, but outmatch them? You follow what I'm saying? So when I speak, no disparaging to the Chief Secretary. I do not mean that. I'm just speaking the fact.
Yeah, Mr. James, I think the trouble that I'm having,
yes,
right? And it's,
let's get to the heart.
The trouble that I'm having is that, as you said before, several people, because like I'm saying, you're not the only person having this conversation. People are having it. But you just said...
Well, you know, Mr. Duke, you know. Let us go back. Mr. Duke himself said that, you know.
Well, Mr. Duke
said that,
Mr. Duke is a different scenario.
Yeah.
We're talking about the people who sat there, looked at the PDP, perhaps wanted the PNM out of office. Yeah. And you just said several people knew, okay, the potential Chief Secretary at the time did not have the needed capacity. Yeah. But everybody waved the flag and we say, well, okay, we're voting and we voted him in.
Well,
he is there now.
Yes. Well.
He is there now. What are you going to do? What is expected? Move a no confidence motion?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all.
So what I'm saying to you is that it seems to me that it's extremely hypocritical in general that people would sit back, look at a young Farley Chavez Augustine aspiring to be the Chief Secretary, see the weaknesses, say nothing at the time, at least perhaps not to him, I don't know, do nothing about it. But because there's that goal to get the PNM out of office, we all go forward, the PNM is out of office, and now the complaints are just coming in. I am curious about several things. How many people have spoken directly with the Chief Secretary about some of these concerns? How many people are willing to say, well, okay, let's perhaps get a council of elders or something, I don't know, to come out and say, because yes, we understand, the Chief Secretary is new, not only to the politics right now, but he's new to the THA in the capacity that he's functioning. Right? So, I suppose we may expect that they're advisors. Now, you say he has advisors. I only know of one advisor named by the Chief Secretary, and that person is Anselm Richards, named as technical advisor to the Division of Finance. I don't know if the Chief Secretary have advisors to the Chief Secretary. Right? Outside of those paid advisors, the people in the background who know the run-ins. The Chief Secretary was not here. The Chief Secretary made a statement today that he was not aware of the marina and so on. When I read it initially, I was thinking this was out in 2018, somewhere there. But then he may have been tied up doing something else, or it could be that he meant the central government did not notify him that, okay, we're going to take this action now. But the point of it is that the Chief Secretary will need those older, experienced, competent people. Not just people who could see all the flaws, but you have to know what positive results or positive value we're adding to the Chief Secretary. And that's the challenge I'm trying to figure out. Have you had conversations with other people about how we could perhaps approach the Chief Secretary to help him?
One of the things that I've done, the things that I've spoken, I did not speak them in a corner. All the political ideas that I'm speaking here now, and I'm not now speaking them in 2022 nor 2021.
Right.
In fact, his political leader is a political student of mine. He was in my organization, the Tobago Liberation Movement. Okay? And so Mr. Duke, where he may not be at my level, but he certainly has heard the issues. You follow what I'm saying? Right? So I don't know that. So I've been speaking these things. He's been hearing and so on. Mr. Augustine has to first accept the fact that he needs guidance. He has to accept.
Mr. James, we're out of time. I don't know if I agree with your last statement, but I respect that that's how you feel. Because I'll tell you something I'm going to accept that that's how you feel. I'll tell you something I said to another senior person, very experienced in the politics, who also early on started talking about inefficiencies and so on that they were seeing in the young executive and our Chief Secretary. And my thing was, listen, you can't expect the Chief Secretary to come to you. you might look at the Chief Secretary and say, Chief Secretary, young, inexperienced, you know what's going on, you know, kind of giddy. This is part, unfortunately, it's part for the course,
But,
because we voted for the Chief Secretary. So how do we go forward? I want your closing remarks in 2 minutes.
My dear,
2 minutes, Mr. James, 2 minutes.
How should I really respond to you there? Because I don't want you to, I am not singling out the Chief Secretary.
No, I
You know what I'm
understand.
saying? I am just speaking as a Tobagonian from historical context, a man concerned. I've been in the trenches a long time. I started off in the late 1990s articulating for constitutional reform. And when I speak, I am speaking from that context. That is the Tobagonian context. Self-government is the Tobagonian destiny. We could try how much to run from it, but we will not get anything done until Tobagonians are sovereign. We'll be made to look like fools, Trinidadians, especially those privileged class of people. They will laugh us, they will laugh our representatives, they will laugh us. Okay, here it is, that we have billions of dollars in oil and gas, and they are ramming tourism, which is not ours either. As I have shown you there, the tourism product they are talking about is not ours. And apart from that, all we are limited to, even though we work and we get $5 billion in Tobago, we are only guaranteed 4.03. So we are already working for Trinidad. I'm saying the Chief Secretary has to be honest with himself. A lot of conversation going on. He must be listening. He has to understand his own deficiencies. People hire councillors because what is happening also, I see there, and I say, but I am speaking from where, from my head is, I see people are wrong.
One minute to
I
Mr.
see
James.
people are wrong the Chief Secretary there as advisor. You say you know of one. That's an advisor in finance.
I know one person amongst us an advisor.
Even during the election. So I don't know what is going on. During the election, you had Winford James. You follow what I'm saying? You have Vanos James. There's also Ashwood Jack. There are people around. Hotoy Charles is always willing. But what you have to also ask yourself.
Where is the last statement? Where are we going out now?
Where are those minds? Are those minds unwavering where the Tobagonian destiny, the right of the Tobagonian is concerned? When you know you're right, let me tell you something. I'm closing it. I'm closing it. If population of Tobago is 65,000, use the same demographic of men and women and put 65,000 Euro Americans in Tobago today. The kind of nonsense conversation we carry on, the men carrying on a conversation. From time they land here, they establish what is Tobago, and they're running the show for themselves.
So you see why I'm having a hard time? We're gonna go. Mr. James, there are many things that you've said that personally I agree with you. I do have some serious challenges. I do have the challenge that people sat there, knew what was happening, said nothing, and now come in to say something else. I wanted to respond, and we're going on. I do have a challenge as well, Tobagonians, that there's an expectation that the Chief Secretary know his shortcomings. The Chief Secretary is quite young. Many of us were there before. When we're moving through life in those earlier stages, even as you get older, you're making a mistake and you really don't know. Somebody got to tell you, or you're going to learn the hard way. I've always said I don't feel as if the executive here is deliberately just doing things that will not benefit us. I think that they're doing things that they believe are the best options.
I'm in agreement with you,
right? But I have a real challenge. Tobagonians, I have a real challenge with us being as critical as we are, on expecting that this young executive, majority of them will just know a lot of the things. How many of them were in the THA before in an executive capacity? How many of them were there before in administrative capacities? We've got to look at that, right? And we maybe need Mr. James again to kind of explore some other areas, because we had to talk about that energy thing that people feel Tobago should get a certain percentage of the budget because oil and gas in the waters, but that's another thing. Thank you. Thank you very much for viewing For the Hour. It was my pleasure chatting with Mr. Anthony James, political activist, a very passionate man. All right, and just thank you for viewing. Have a good night.